Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon's Heritage Advisory Committee meeting. And I'm going to call it to order now and begin by just inviting you to join me in a moment of silent reflection on today's business. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, and yes, go ahead. Mr. Voigt?
Yeah, usually doesn't happen on this side of the table. Your worship, I will be recusing myself from item 7B, which is the work plan consideration, because one of the items listed in there is related to a family business proposal.
Come to think of it, I noticed that. So thank you very much. And we will, call you back when we're done. I just want to say that members of the public are always encouraged to provide this committee with their comments and questions. Presentations must be prearranged with legislative services before the agenda is released. Members of the public who wish to make a deputation about a specific agenda item at the meeting must register in advance with legislative services by 4 p.m. on the day prior. By contacting the deputy clerk at meaford.ca or at 519-538-1060 extension 1100. Presentations are limited to 10 minutes and deputations to 5 minutes. We have no presentations today, and I believe we do have deputations on agenda items. Am I correct? So are we, do we hear those before we move into the next section?
Your worship, the folks that are here either in person or virtually will be speaking or are essentially available to answer questions.
Okay.
On each of the items.
Okay, so we'll come back to once we've had a presentation from staff. Thank you. So the next item is the approval of our minutes from May 3rd. Can I have a mover and seconder for that? Okay, moved by I'm trying to think of your title. So committee member Liz and seconded by committee member Councillor Greenfield. Any questions, errors, or omissions? Otherwise, all in favor? And those are accepted. Thank you. Moving on to heritage permit applications. The first item today is, and we have two. Recommendation that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend that the Council of the Municipality of Meaford approve Part 3 of the Heritage Permit HO4-21 for 141 Psych Street North. And I'm going to turn it over to Denise or to who is going to take this for. Okay, thank you. If you'll take this for staff.
Sorry, can we please get a mover and a seconder for that one?
Yeah, sure I can. Moved by Councillor, it's not Councillor, it's when you change hats, and by member Vic, and seconded by Jim. So go ahead, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Yes, so for those of you who haven't met me, my name is Meredith. I'm a planner here at the municipality. So this is the first time I'm working on heritage file. It's been a great opportunity. So this is the third time that this file is coming back to the Heritage Advisory Committee. There have been 2 previous approvals for various works on the property. And there were 3 outstanding items that have now come back to the committee for their review today. And that's what the report is detailing. And the recommendation is that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend that the Council of the Municipality of Meaford approve this Part 3 of the Heritage Permit I just mentioned, H04-21, for the property at 141 Psych Street North. And the property owner is on Zoom and available today to answer questions. And of course, I'll answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
So questions. I think that I'm sure we have some. Did you want to go, Jim? Let me just put your mic on.
Yeah. I'm I'm quite disappointed the applicant isn't here. Because there's a few questions that I'd like to have answered. The drawing revision issued for the permit, that's the architectural drawing that was issued for the permit, was done November 24th of last year. I just wanted to know if the building permit changed without a heritage permit change, and why was the heritage permit change not applied for until 10 months later? And after significant changes, they were not part of the permit that have been undertaken. I don't know if staff can answer that since the applicant isn't here.
For you, Mr. Chair, the applicant is available on Zoom, so he might be able to speak to it.
Yes,
your questions.
is he connected? Could we?
Yes, I'm connected.
Okay, would you like to answer Mr. Sullivan's question?
That's only,
I'd like him to just sort of clarify a little bit. I did put an application in originally in 2021. We built during the middle of the pandemic. Prices were crazy. I had to curtail some of the plans that had been initially submitted to the Heritage Committee, just due to financial constraints. We amended drawings based on a meeting with the building department, the chief building officer, in August of 2019. We went through a very lengthy process of getting him the information that he needed. There was a little bit of a lack of clarity in terms of exactly what he needed. So 2 separate sets of drawings later and 2 separate engineers reports later, the information was submitted to the town late November of 2022. And it actually took us till about April to be contacted by the town to the building department to come in and actually approve the framing and the structural things that were outstanding. Regular contact was made. I'm not quite sure what the delay was all about, but it wasn't until early April of this year that I actually received a framing pass and an installation pass. So I was held up for quite a lengthy period of time, and that is why work has commenced following these inspections that were necessary by the building department.
I think we have a few other points here. Did you want to continue?
Yeah. So the building permit was issued, but there was no reapplication for like a third part of the heritage permit until now?
No, at the same time that I applied for, let's just say, a part 2 of my building permit, which was approval to go ahead with the deck on the back and approval from them to go ahead with the flat roof, which had been approved by the Heritage Committee back in June of 2021. We moved ahead with it based on the approvals from them. At that point in time, drawings were submitted to Denise sometime in late June, I believe. And I received an email, indicating that there were no issues with moving forward with putting the deck and the flat portion onto the front of the house. So we began to work.
You keep going, I guess.
Yeah, so staff approved then like the third part of the permit already, or?
It's not necessarily a third part of the permit. It was based on the drawings that were initially submitted in September of 2022. A second set of drawings was required, and those are the copies that you have, I believe, in as part of your docket for this meeting. They were finally approved, as I said, in April, and were submitted to the town heritage committee in June.
We didn't get them until now. So the last time we approved anything was June 10th. And sorry. Yeah, June, that's right, June 10th, 2021. And just after reviewing the Zoom video this morning, there was a lot of things that have been done since June 10th that weren't agreed to at that June 10th meeting. You said that you would return with a color palette for painting the windows, and you were going to repair and replace the 2 stained glass windows.
Yes.
I don't think you. There was no recommendation on changing the windows by the committee or passed by council, but I think you've changed those. And there was no decision arrived for the covering of the rear east-facing wall, but I know you've started on that now. The dormer walkout for the deck, it wasn't approved, and it's basically half built right now. Yeah, the addition wasn't done, and now the whole wall is exposed, and really that brick should be replaced. We didn't receive a picture of the facade, the front-facing Psych Street. Just wondering why. And the original decorative top molding on all the windows needs replacing. I just wondering if you had preserved those.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. And in fact, they're actually being reproduced as we speak. Again, it took some time to get this all back up and going. I actually did have numerous discussions about replacing the brick, and was very clear that it was not within my budget to replace that brick in the back. That was pulled off for structural reasons. We've kept returns around both sides. We've kept the integrity of the front of all the 3 roadside sides of the building. And as far as the deck going in, the deck was put in as per our drawings and approval by the building department. And again, by an email approval from town staff to go ahead with it. We have not yet. And I mean, I have to apologize because I actually got notification about this meeting at 12 o'clock, 12:07 today. So I'm a little bit ill prepared, and I have since giving the revised drawings at the end of June to the town staff. I requested the earliest possible date, hoping that it was going to be sometime in August as we were proceeding with work. And as I said, I just received notice of this a couple hours ago, so I'm trying to sort of answer these questions on the fly without a whole lot of time to prepare for them. The front of the house, the trim is all being replaced. We did replace the windows because the windows were not weather resistant. I mean, and that was indicated in both of the Heritage Committee meetings that I would replace the windows with new high functioning windows and maintain the trim around the building. As far as the stained glass windows go, they are in for repair right now, and the process will be to install them again with some weather protection on the top front above the flat porch. As far as color palettes go, I was very clear right from the start, the color palette that I wish to go with. The Heritage Committee would have preferred me to paint it white. I basically have intimated on numerous occasions that black was the color palette that I was using. And that's essentially what we were planning to go ahead with. As far as railings and decorative things for the rear and the deck, we are doing a privacy screen, obviously, to give a little bit of privacy up on that particular deck area. And I was not aware that I needed the Heritage Committee's approval to do a privacy screen. So, and again, that has not actually been put into place. That was all supposed to be discussed at this meeting, which I, again, had hoped I would get a little more notice for.
Actually, in that June 10th meeting, you said you were going to hold off supplying the colors or painting the windows, and you're going to leave them as they were. You also mentioned that you were going to repair the stained glass windows.
Well, as I just indicated, I am in the process of repairing those stained glass windows. They had to be removed to be repaired. So that is happening. And I really only indicated that I was going to maintain the heritage integrity of the trim that was around the windows, all of the windows, which is what I'm trying to do. The window with the stained glass in the very front of the building, the large white window there, was not repairable and not within my budget to have a, new one built out of wood. So we are doing our best to reproduce the window trims as they were on the building, and again, put the stained glass back in where it was.
So, just to clarify, the stained glass windows will go back in front of the windows you have there now?
Absolutely. Yeah. They were the stained glass window was the only window in that in both of those openings. One is covered under the porch. The other is actually on the second floor, and it had bowed out and the weather had deteriorated. Like, yeah, it almost needs to be rebuilt.
Yeah, the main floor front window, the large window there, was stained glass. It's
There
stained
was a stained glass panel in it. Yes.
Yeah. The window that's there now isn't the same configuration either as the original window.
No, it's not. No, and again, for budgetary reasons, I'm aware that there are options out there, I suppose, for heritage grants, that sort of thing. But at this point, I did not have the budget to build a new one of those windows, a brand new window out of wood with a stained glass as it was.
Have you decided on the type of siding then that you would prefer on the rear of the building?
I'm doing actually the most economical and most sort of with a bit of a heritage feel to it for the rear of the building. Yes.
Am I right that it's going to be board and batten on the north side, but horizontal siding on the rear, the east side?
The east side.
That is facing the
The
water.
rear of the building, yes. We did the brick returns all the way around to 4 feet on either side. We are doing board and batten up to the level of the shed dormer, and as was requested by the Heritage Committee, we are going to do cedar shakes on the returns and the gable ends as well. So they will, as well as the under portion of under the soffits of the front porch as well.
So do the minutes show anywhere? I seem to recall that it was to be bricked. The east wall was to be restored, the brick to be restored. And do the minutes show that, or does anyone have? It sounds as if there's been some discussion with staff in the interval, giving the proponent the opportunity to go with the siding here. Mr. Boyd?
Through your worship, there's when in terms of the siding and that, there's been no discussion. There's been a number of comments made that staff have already approved this. We have not. This is before the Heritage Advisory Committee to identify primarily the three things that were outstanding. One member has brought up other issues where it's not in conformance with what was approved. So that's kind of two sets of things, right? There's the list of the exterior, the color palette, and the railing that are that were the defined 3 outstanding items, issues of not compliance with what was supposed to happen on the approval. Again, can't be discussed, but that's a second matter. In terms of the deck and all that, when it comes to the building permit, when someone pulls a building permit to do, as the addition was here, that doesn't mean that we can make them build it. So the applicant has a choice to say, I'm not building that, and therefore apply to do a deck permit, and away you go and you can build a deck. What I think has happened there then, of course, is, as been noted, that now has taken a wall that was previously not visible from the public realm, and now you can see it. So I think when we're looking in terms of the character of the heritage district, it's up to the advisory committee to determine if that has an impact on the character of the district. Again, remember, this is not a designated building. It is just designated under the district. So this is where you'll have to weigh what those impacts are.
I think part of our consideration is I believe it's one of 3 turreted homes in the municipality. But anyway, I'd like to hear from other members of the committee just quickly, how, if there's anything that you want to add or before we come to a conclusion here. So go ahead, Mr. Mitchell.
I don't know how quick I'll be. I think at the last meeting, we demonstrated a significant amount of trust on our part, that Mr. Outerbridge would work within the process, and we'd essentially work together to make the overall project work. And I'm not sure that was merited. As the report from staff notes, the work's already gone far beyond the need for further discussion, things that were deferred, or additional communication with the committee and information from the applicant. In some cases, the actual requirements have been ignored. I'm pretty surprised why the building permit was issued for the work. Then that speaks to, I guess, administration coordination, but specifically, unless I've missed something in the report. My first comment here, and this is only a comment, is that the shed roof that we suggested it's much closer to a flat extension with very minimal pitch. The effect is quite dominant from Psych Street. I think this is our fault, and it points to the need for more specifics when we recommend to council, like, for example, a minimum pitch in this case. The dormer windows in the drawing submitted in June 2021, they were to be vertically oriented. Of the permit confirms this. Even on page 26 of this agenda, the part 3 submission shows 4 vertical openings. There's no door with kind of small windows to the side, and there's no cantilever balcony there. This work has been done, and it's never been included in any submission, unless I am really missing something. Considering the work has been done, I think at the very least, the flanking windows need to be replaced with larger, taller windows. And I would think that in this case, we would need to discuss minimal dimensions. I'd suggest that we also return to the original drawing and not include doors or a balcony, but otherwise we need more detail from the applicant and time to consider that in an application, in my opinion. I've had a week to see this stuff, and it's the first time since June of 21. Regarding the window replacement that Jim was talking about, I do appreciate that they've been replaced to the framing and they're not inserts. The front window bears no resemblance to what was there. And on page 19 of the agenda in the submitted drawings, for the application, it does not look like that window. I think original window and trim design should be maintained, and that means, you know, we need to look at that front window. But we can't say much about the back. All we have is, you know, whatever came out of the computer rendering and the words wood railing. So I would think that we would need to see some much more detailed drawings of the railings before we can say anything to that. When that's determined, the front railing, then we can say, yeah, the rear railing we made to the same design and materials. And the brick, I think as Mr. Voigt just said, was deferred. And the fact that the lower addition is no longer part of the design, that would have meant much less of the brick would be.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing what you guys are, what's
Sorry,
being said there.
the fact
Yeah.
that work has gone on to install siding when that was to be determined. It's right here, including the cladding of the garage and second story. I think, you know, at this point, I would say brick.
Well, I mean, I will sort of repeat exactly my words from the June 21st meeting when brick was suggested. If the town has a $50,000 heritage grant for me to re-brick the back of the building, very prepared to go ahead and do that. But it is not within the budget. It was not within the budget to do this.
But the fact is it was deferred, so it should have been part of a third application before work was begun.
Okay, well, and I will also go back to the fact that I submitted stuff in late June and was told there was no meeting in July, that there would more than likely be a meeting in August, and that I would get put on it. This has taken an inordinate amount of time due to delays with the building department. And I am on a deadline to get it done. And I have made overtures to see about getting this before yourselves, made numerous overtures to keep it moving with the building department. And I have, I mean, since I've had a very small window to be able to actually do any work to the place.
Mr. Voigt, you wish to make a comment?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a complicated matter. I think if everyone was looking back in hindsight, we would say that a 3-part heritage permit was probably not the greatest idea, right? You add to that literal life-changing events that happened with the pandemic and all the things, the costs and all that. So that's fair. While we're here to review an application on its merits and we have the applicant to answer questions, I don't want us to get into too much sort of debate, but I will say on a matter of fact, and the information is there, that I do think it is inappropriate to suggest that there were all kinds of delays from the building permit in terms of the inspections that were done. I know firsthand that the CBO was extensively involved and had to go in and ask them to remove work that had been done interiorly because the inspections were not asked for, and uncover structural features that they needed to inspect. And that was an awful lot of work right there. So I will just say that it is inappropriate to be suggesting that this delay is at any case, the fault of the building, the chief building official or his staff.
Thank you very much. I've been inclined to say that I think that to some degree we're essentially taking a lot of time here that we're not really being listened to in terms of what the Heritage Committee has to tell this gentleman. I'd like to hear from our other panelists, Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks, Mayor Ross. I just have two or three comments. First of all, the decorative window, the stained glass window. I have a sense of the difficulties around something like that. It's a unique feature, and we've heard about giving every effort into repairing the trim around it, and I think that's admirable to try to do that. So to me, that's a plus. I, having been in construction for a long time, I have worked on some projects with some older buildings, and in spite of their structural character and their original construction quality, it's a challenge going into an older building, and the problem is you uncover one challenge and that leads to 2 or 3 or 4. It never ends. Having done some masonry work in the past, I'm prone to bricks. I'm still trying to figure why we're ending up with a you can call it a back wall if you wish, but replacing the bricks with windows and horizontal siding, it certainly takes away from the original character of the building. The third story renovations, I can understand why they were desired, and again, there's to me, there's just a huge difference between the Psych Street side of this building and the Bayfield side. It's like two different houses now. That's about it. I'm wondering if maybe what I call the attic renovation could have been done somewhat differently, but anyway, it's as I said originally, it's this must have been a challenging project, and I perhaps it's too bad a number of these items were not ironed out 2 or 3 years ago, but let's continue and try to make the very best of this.
Can I ask you?
Everyone.
Can I ask you, Councillor Greenfield, is $50,000 an accurate estimate to rebrick the back of the house?
In today's world of construction, no monetary amount surprises me.
I think you're right. Okay, Mr. Voigt.
Through your worship, both you and Councillor Greenfield have explicitly said, let's make sure to keep moving along. So in light of that, again, there's been those things that were for sure as part 3 in terms of those things that need to be addressed. The other members of the committee that spoke had also mentioned other deviations from parts 1 and 2. So knowing that, again, in the broadest picture, we you or we could collectively can consider, of course, the financial impact of these requests, and then that should be understood. And then, of course, the overall impact to the district. With that, what is always before the committee is that you can choose to approve, presented, choose to deny, and these are recommendations, of course, that go to council. C would be to approve with conditions, and those might be to address some of the things that you've brought up. Or D, the option is to defer for further information so that you can make that determination. I just put that out there as a reminder that so that we don't get into perhaps more debate, if I can characterize it that way. Those options are always available.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchener?
Could I just ask then that it's hard to somewhat tell what is included in part 3, except I guess, unless we're just to read the summary prior to the analysis and the recommendation, is that correct? Because there's a lot of drawings and actual pictures of what's being done. Is it just that part that we're looking at then?
Through you, Mr. Your Worship. So there were three items that were outstanding from the previous heritage approval on this property. And those are the 3 elements that are the subject of the report and the subject of discussion today. So those 3 items are firstly, the cladding of the 2nd story. The second item or set of details is the railing at the rear side of the house. And the final item is the color palette of the windows and the trim.
Understand the cladding part. I'm a little confused as to how the railing at the rear can be, how we can say, oh yeah, go ahead and make it the same as the front, since there isn't anything on the front yet. And that is being the most important part of the house, the part that we would need to see some design on. Already to say anything about the color palette. I'm just wondering about the railing, how we can make any determination on that.
Thing, I feel in a way we've been kind of taken down the garden path. I think in all sincerity wanted to work with this gentleman, and unfortunately COVID happened and we weren't able to physically be around. I think these 3 items that are outstanding should have some physical involvement on behalf of our committee. I think that if there's a railing going in, and I believe there was supposed to be a fire escape going in on one side as well. I haven't heard anything about that one. The deck is certainly not, in my estimation, befitting a heritage building. And the color, yes, I don't like black, but it's there and we can't address that. But there is a palette that fits heritage that would work, and maybe he could use it elsewhere. And I really think the transom window that had the stained glass in it is entirely possible to be replaced and put back in. There are all sorts of people who do that. And I think that should be stipulated. This is a turreted house, and it's really important that it keeps its integrity for the community.
Sorry, I'm not hearing anything again.
Sorry.
I'm missing a good part
I've
of
got the
this.
mic on now. That's probably better.
Okay.
I thank Director Boyd for explaining the complexity of this. 3 parts. You're right. It shouldn't be this way. But the reason this got brought to the Heritage Committee at the very beginning was because all the brick off the rear of the house had been removed. To end up with the rear of the house not having the brick replaced would be a real shame.
Just if I can address that super quickly, it was removed as a structural issue in order to get the building back up to square and level, which was a huge job. And again, it was not an issue because the first floor of that was supposed to, again, be an addition in the original drawings and original proposal.
I'm just going to bring it back to the discussion about railings. I wish I had a picture of the structure before the work started, but I believe were there not white wood and quite heavy duty, I want to call them balustrades or something, but they were very, very attractive. Pardon? Yeah, around the turret. And what we're seeing here really appears to be wrought iron, a wrought iron railing. And is that the intention, or is that just, as Mr. Mitchner said, what the computer put out for a railing?
I'm unclear of what you're looking at because I don't believe yet submitted any drawings with railings on the turret or renderings.
That's what we're looking at.
Okay.
So that's in the drawings that on my computer. But anyway, it is yeah, that's it exactly. Yes. So at any rate, I'm a little mystified too, if I can say, just you know, you have board and batten vertical siding on the northern exposure, but you're proposing horizontal siding on the exposure toward Bayfield Street. Yeah, and that's also at the back of the house. That's a
No, we actually there's board and batten vertical, board and batten or board on there at this particular point in time. The dormers will be the sides of the dormers, and the returns in the front of that will be cedar shake, as was requested. And there's nothing on the north side. We were talking, I mean, the original porch underneath the flat roof and the front porch is what was there. It's a little bit higher, and the proposal was to do cedar shake to match the other cedar shake.
In our discussions on June 21st, 2021, it was a fish scale. I'm not sure if they're cedar, but they are fish scale style, the same as what's on the existing dormers. I think that's what you were meaning.
What were on the existing gable ends, there's two different styles. There's fish scale and there's a diamond shape as well that are up in the two gable ends, one facing Psych Street, one facing Parker Street.
The idea would be to have the same type.
Sorry, I missed that.
I think what you intended to say was you wanted to have the same type of siding on the dormer as is there now on the existing gable ends.
Yes, was cedar shake, cedar shingles.
Or not, but this is a very in-depth discussion.
Yep.
We've been at it for 45 minutes. We're not getting anywhere. Why do we not ask this gentleman to come and make a delegation to us? Is that possible with his drawings so that we could actually look at them and hit with samples and his color palette railing samples? Is that possible?
Mr. Voigt.
Through your worship, so yes and no. You cannot request that he present, but you can defer for further information, which would be submitted in the form of drawings and likely he can choose to come, which would make all the sense in the world from all parties, but just technically, you can't make someone appear before you.
Could I ask, you, sir, if you would be willing to, join us in person and with the drawings and have some more fruitful discussion than we're having now, that's for sure, about, it would be very helpful, I think, to us to be able to, aid and abet you in getting this project moving faster and to your satisfaction.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm two things. I'm not sure when you all heard that there was a Heritage Committee meeting. I heard at 12:07 today. So
that was a technical
prepared.
problem. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I'm not pointing any fingers. I'm just saying that I came in and presented these drawings in June, hoping that we could do exactly that and sit down and do what we needed to do. And we're 2 months and a half almost later. And I have, for, again, financial reasons, I have had to just move this forward. Not my intention to pull the wool over anyone's eyes, not my intention to actually do anything out of character. We are working within the budget we have and within the confines of what we have available to get this done, to hopefully meet everyone's expectations on the front 3 sides of the building.
Mr. Voigt?
Might I suggest that, so a couple things we can, as soon as that information is submitted, we can set up a meeting, because as you all know, we're not on a kind of regular schedule. We'll set up the meeting as soon as practicable for everyone. But I've heard wanting details about the railing, how it relates to the railing at the front in terms of the original design, which, by the way, you can see on Google Street View. The color of the brick and what was there in the past and how that relates to the backside of the building. If you could be explicit on what you're asking this gentleman to supply, and then you'll have what you want to look at, and then he knows that you're not going to ask for something else, and you can move forward.
So we need to revise this recommendation somewhat then, or motion.
I would say that there would be a motion to defer based on requiring additional information, and then just list what those pieces of information are. Again, that only addresses the missing stuff. It doesn't address the where it is running contrary to what was approved. Who knows if there's something else you want to see on that, perhaps. Make it clear now, because we don't want to go through this again. That I don't think that's fair to anyone involved.
And can you give us an idea of what kind of a timeline that we could do this with? If we do,
If I could perhaps ask that you first do the motion to defer and come up with that list, and I'll look at the dates at that while we're doing this.
So we've got a scribe working over there that can help us wordsmith a bit here. The recommendation is that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend that Council of the Municipality of Meaford defer Part 3 of Heritage Permit H04-21 for 141 Psych Street North until there has been an opportunity for the committee to meet with the proponent to resolve number 1, railings. Number 2 is cladding, and number 3.
Sorry, I'm still missing all of this.
Yeah. You need to turn your mic on there, Liz. Sorry.
Sorry, you. I know this is frustrating for you, and we'd like you to get on as quickly as you can get on and get it done for your sake. But I think, again, the integrity of this building is really of the utmost for Meaford. So I'm certainly brick, and I realize that's expensive, but it is the integrity of the building, and it can be discussed. But the railings, yes, and the color trims, And I say, and also the stained glass in that window. I don't know where it went, but
I have it.
you have it?
Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I still have the entire thing, but again, it's not within my budget to rebuild
Yeah.
a complete casement window out of the parts
So,
that.
and
I think that someone could probably give you a hand with that. There is a way to take stained glass and embed it into the actual frame of the window with wood. And it would just bring back what that window used to look
I'm going to suggest that can we make that motion read just to deal with the elements of part 3 of the heritage permit, and is there a part 4 coming?
Your worship, you shouldn't be.
Okay, then as long as we're encompassing everything, all the changes that are going to be made here, that would be good. Meredith?
For you, Mr. Worship, thank you. I just thought it might be good just to clarify that we're all on the same page about this part 3 and what it encompasses.
Yes.
I know I did say this a few minutes ago, but just as a refresher. So the first item is the exterior cladding of the garage and second story. I apologize. I think a few minutes ago I just said the second story, but it's the exterior cladding of the garage and the second story. There aren't any changes in this submission to the exterior cladding of the garage, but it is still an item for discussion as part of this report and this meeting. The second set of details is the railing at the rear side of the house, if we all understand. And then the final item is relates to the color palette of the windows and trim. Thank you.
Okay, so those are part of the recommendation. It's like we can recommend that he gets what he wants, but we can't recommend that he change his mind. So, yeah, sorry.
I have to say, if we're recommending that the rear railing is similar to the front railing, currently there is no front railing, nor have we received any plans for this. So shouldn't that be part of part 3?
Yeah.
And I would also like to, well, let's deal with the railing part first.
Yep. No,
So is it possible to have that come in as part of this so that we can see drawings for the front porch that is now being created and see the railing on that? And then it's easy to say that.
Again, I know we're in the trying to move it along and knowing that we have a full agenda. The motion is something along the lines of that the Heritage Advisory Committee is deferring this to, and I'll give you some options for dates shortly, so that they can receive further information on those 3 parts. It will be up to the applicant to provide that sufficient information. I can't make people. Yeah, give me. So you want to see something about the railing, the color palette, and the cladding. He's heard through the discussion that your preference for cladding is brick, so that like the conversation has mentioned all these things, but just so we're clear that was what the additional submission or clarification materials are. And if there's anything else, now would be the time to do that. And I will just note that to give the applicant the time to pull these last bits of material together, staff time to put it into a package, the committee time to review it, and the public notice of another meeting coming up and all that. It's feeling like the super fastest this could be would be Wednesday, October 11th. That's probably pushing it, given all the people that need to come together. Or we do the following to 18th or 25th. All of those dates can get us to the next council meeting of November 13th. So none of those dates trigger it following into another month, just to note that. So back to, are there other issues that you'd like added to the, please give us more?
Okay, Liz first and then,
Sorry, I'll be short. May I ask you a question? I don't even know your name. I've forgotten.
Howie,
Okay, Howard, yeah, I have met you. Is the building open now? Is it secure?
yes, the building's open. Yeah, and to be
So-
clear, I want to be clear, just addressing what Rob just said. My deadline to have this done is September 30th. That's the timeline I've been working on. That is why I submitted drawings and opened this process up in June. It is why it's why things have been happening so fast and furious there, because I have a deadline and the only outstanding issues were deck railing on the rear second floor of the old drawings. The deck is in. I'm not looking at doing railings on the rear deck. I'm looking at doing a privacy screen, which is, I believe, on the drawings that you saw. And there was no mention of railings in the front of the house. I can reproduce the wood railings, and all the wood trim and color palettes, again, have been mentioned. The brick in the back, it was raised. Whether I was going to clad the entire garage in brick, I can't. I don't have access to it. The brick that was removed off the back is gone. So I do want to come to a solution with you. I need to come to it very quickly because, again, I have a deadline to get this done for a number of reasons.
so, Mr. Voigt,
One correction, the 25th doesn't work because the Committee of Adjustment meets. So now we're down to two options. Second, Denise made note, and again, this is why having multi-phased heritage permits becomes problematic. Part 2 of this permit actually identified, and it's in your report on page 2 of 4, that the porch railing at the front is consistent with the turret railing. So that already has been addressed. So
Okay.
there's that requirement is there. Perhaps that's on the list of things still to be done and completed. This is also why I think it will be, if the committee would like, while we usually just reference past information, I think I'm going to ask staff that when this comes forward, that we do attach those other decisions, because again, we've pulled this thing apart 6 different ways, and I think there's a lot of confusion now about what is and isn't in play. But it sounds like we're still just talking about the same 3 things that we started off with, and that the Heritage Advisory Committee is deferring for further information to so they can review that at the next possible date of
Yes.
the committee.
Alex, do you have a date?
Through the chair, I just wanted to clarify what we have kind of on the table, because we will need a mover and a seconder. And what I have is that the Heritage Advisory Committee defer the motion until further information is provided regarding the rear deck railing, color palette, and cladding. So if that sounds correct, we'll just need a mover and a seconder and a vote.
Yes, okay. And do you have a date there? I'm sorry, did I miss it?
Well, I think that's what we were.
Oh, just says.
Motion says to the next. The motion could say to the next available time, because we
Okay.
will have to check.
Yes.
There's also a member
Okay.
who's not here. It'll tentatively be the October 11th, or my computer has decided to restart itself, or 18th. So I don't-
Most important that we involve the
We-
opponent here is in the planning for the date so that he can be present.
We were planning to schedule one last heritage meeting for the year, so it should be before the end of the year at the very latest.
So that maybe doesn't, delight you, sir, but it's at least gives us an opportunity to all get on the same page and get you back on the rails.
Yeah. I'm not even quite sure how to address that.
I think we'll be looking to get this, the earliest date possible. so that we can get you, this wouldn't be the first time that we've moved heaven and earth to try and help somebody through the situation like this. And the alternative is not very desirable because, nobody is really around the horseshoe is terribly excited about where we are at this moment. We'd like to have a lot more clarity and be on the same page.
Okay. I can understand that. I need to kind of wrap my head around it. I again have been working based on the fact that I opened the door 2.5 months ago to do this, and I'm here now with 2 hours notice getting all of this. So, and with a deadline to finish that's literally 3 weeks away. So I need to process this. Make your motion. I will be at your disposal at any point in time. My concern is just having this move forward at the earliest possible convenience.
It's not pretty the way it is. None of us are happy with it. So
again, this is the first I'm hearing of it. I have, I got a call from my architect, apparently, who was reached out to by the town, as opposed to contacting the homeowner. And that was 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I'm somehow there's been something lost in communicating with me, who is actually answerable to all of this, to you guys, and just letting me know that this is the process that's going on, or that even it's a discussion that's going on. I've been up there almost every day for the last 2.5 months and have not heard anyone by except the chief building officer. So, okay, I will, I'll leave it to you to defer this as you see fit. And I guess I will have to reach out and figure out where I go from here.
Do we have a mover and a seconder for the motion?
I just want to make sure everything basically then from part 3 is going to be deferred. Only 3 things that were deferred from part 2. So basically what we're saying is we're deferring everything until the next meeting. Okay.
Okay. We need a mover and a seconder. It's moved by Councillor Greenfield, seconded by, I'll second it. Can I do that? We don't have the clerk here to.
Matt's not here. I feel like you would say the chair can't second.
Okay,
it.
let's seconded by Liz Harris. All in favor? And we have a quorum agreeing to that. Okay. Thank you, sir. We'll be back to you.
Okay.
The second item here is, sorry.
Yes, then, what do we do about the stuff that's gone on that is absolutely not being applied for? Such as the balcony and the fact that the windows are in contravention of what we did agree to, I believe, or at least we're in the, what we did agree to, and we're in the original second part application.
Through your worship, given the things that have come up during this discussion, we'll take a look at the meeting notes and see what those various things are. I think this is going to have to be, unfortunately, probably a more in-depth report to, as I said, we'll also attach those approvals so everyone knows exactly what we're talking about, but then highlighting where the construction that has happened is already deviating. And then I think it will be up to the committee to suggest, as part of your recommendation, either remedial works to be done to correct that, or not. I think you have that opportunity. Again, normally, if it would have been one permit, a bunch of stuff gets done. Perhaps it's not in line, then we start looking at enforcement issues, and that's, no one wants to go down that kind of path. That's really complicated and messy. So maybe it is part of this recommendation to council as part of the final approval to also, kind of air quotes, fix the windows as per the
Yeah.
original plan.
But he's building a balcony that he's never applied for. Is he going to continue to work on that? And then what do we do?
Puts us in a really difficult position because, we want to be accommodating for people who want to build and renovate heritage homes, but then it's the lack of conversation and communication with the proponent and us and staff. This is a big project and, we almost lost that.
It's going south too.
And it's, I'm really concerned about that back wall. And if it's open, he could just say, oof, and go, and then the house sits there.
No, I think those are excellent points. We'll make a point also to so that if there are questions related to the various things that have been done and the timing of this, he's been working directly on this application. And so he'll be able to highlight the kinds of challenges that have come forth. And then he'll also be able to answer those questions of what if there is another permit, what does that look like? Which ones trigger which kinds of approvals and that.
Mr. Sullivan?
I know we all want this to end, but every time somebody speaks, there's something else that comes up about it. And I guess, it's been so long. There can be problems develop. As you mentioned, we don't really want to talk about them, but the municipality can actually make any changes. They can make the proponent replace them or fix them. That's covered under the Ontario Heritage Act, Part 5. And that's, I don't think we want to go there, though, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to move on. I think we're all, somewhat disappointed in the way this is unfolded.
I know we have someone else that needs
Yes.
to get going. Could we return to have a few questions on this after that is done?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I don't have answers yet to what I would really like to know about this.
Yeah,
The
okay.
best route forward on stuff that he's doing that.
Well, I think he has fundamentally, tried to circumvent, the system. And that doesn't sit well with me, so.
Yeah, there is a recording of the last meeting in June 2021 as well.
So let's move on. I need a mover and seconder to put on the table the recommendation of the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend to council that the heritage permit for 191 Psych Street North be approved. Mover and seconder, it's moved by Ms. Harris and seconded by Mr. Sullivan. So over to staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I did this report, so I don't want to suggest it's similar to the last report, but there is a couple of things that are similar. One is that some works have taken place. So I'm happy to go over some of those details with you, but for the most part, the report is pretty self-explanatory about what the applicant is seeking to do. There's you've probably seen the property and there's pictures attached that the applicant also provided. So all those photos were provided with the application. The applicant's also here with their contractor builder who did some of the works to answer questions. There are some reasons behind some of the changes that I'm sure they can explain better than I would. But I did want to just highlight a few things in the report. One of them was, so the replacement of the facade. Normally we do support brick type materials, but in this case, the materials already were aluminum. So they've sought to replace it with a vinyl siding, so it would look very similar to the what it looked like before. And I think most people are probably pretty familiar with this property, being that it's on the corner of two main streets. There's a number of windows that were replaced, and I highlighted those specifically because the dimensions changed, which were the ones that I found as problematic with the policies. And there's a few doors that were proposed to be changed and some other works to the veranda and that sort of thing. And the applicants indicated to me that they're trying to replicate as many of the original details as possible. So you have, I think, the applicant's list, very specific list that we've put in attachment 1 or appendix 1. I'm happy to explain further about it, but as you know, there was a complaint that came in that we were addressing. So we found out about the works and we're reviewing this retroactively, much like some of the other things that have happened where we find out someone puts up a sign or something like that. It's kind of similar, but the applicant has been willing to work with me to apply for the permit, and they did so a couple of months ago. This was our first chance to have a meeting together. So I'm sure they can explain the rationale for why they made some of the changes. I put a little bit of that rationale in the report. It's our understanding that some of the window dimensions were unusual and difficult to get similar window sizes, but also that the windows that were there were not original windows. So they were not installed in a great manner. So they weren't structurally installed the way they should have been. So that's some of the reasoning behind some of the changes. But otherwise, like I said, the applicant is here and can answer questions, and I'm sure that there's more details that he can provide.
Sure. So questions, Mr. Michener?
Not so much. I have some comments, I guess, and there might be some questions in there, but I mean, and I don't want to take up a lot of time with this, but I think this merits a lot of further discussion down the road. But this is the second application, as you've noted, that is putting us, this committee and council for that matter, in a really tough position. The owners made investment already, and if we go by the book and recommend to council they roll everything back, then we're evil. If we simply allow it all, then we're pushovers, and why do we even have a heritage district and a committee and councils in the same position? And it's either appropriate or ironic that the CHO news article that was, or newsletter that was included with the agenda as an article that's covering almost the same concept. So we need to look at how we got here. Obviously, the owner bears some responsibility. Sorry, I thought you had something. But so does the municipality, the building department, bylaw enforcement. And we really got to coordinate this and have communication, and you know, this kind of stuff shouldn't be happening. People who live in the heritage district should know they live in the heritage district, and you know, have support and know why it's a good thing, etc. In this case, I recognize that the owner has additional challenges. Just like 141, it's a corner lot, actually more than a corner lot. 3 sides are visible. So that adds to it, and that you're not just dealing with the front facade. I'd suggest the idea that you couldn't get windows to fill this, to fill the same spaces or very similar space in a wood frame house. I'm sure that could have been worked around, and this is also where communication comes in, and we need to look at, you know, helping homeowners when they are trying to do the right thing. On the west side, there are 2 windows replaced, and the openings have definitely changed. To my mind, it's mitigated a bit by the middle divider on those square windows. I mean, ideally, it would have been a sash window in that place. And I suppose something like that might still be possible, a full sash divider that would make it look like the lower window on the east side. Having said all that, personally, the fact that it is divided and they look like 2 vertical windows side by side, I don't think the proportions and the overall effect are horrible. On the north side, in the upper story, I guess that picture window on the left was added at some point in the past. And if we are going to allow the west windows that have been installed, then the new windows on the north are consistent with that. They have the same middle divider. They suggest a 1:2 proportion. ×2, just like the one on the east side. And I think they potentially balance. But I think porch, I think here's where we have an opportunity. The work hasn't been done yet. And I think this is where we should try and make every effort to replace the windows with something similar, maintain the trim as the applicant suggested. And on the east side of the house, which is also very visible from the road, you know, the replacement of the rear porch is also a chance to do something more in keeping with the period of the house and the railing and balusters. I guess this is for staff. Is there a way to, without requiring a second part of a permit, which we've just gone through, for a subcommittee of our group to work with the owner to help develop a design for that rear porch, to help look at windows on the enclosed porch? Is that something we're able to do to try to facilitate this and move it forward?
Through your worship, that's a good question. The challenge perhaps with that would be then if you're deep into an application, then you're kind of reviewing your own work and recommending approval on your own work to council.
Well, I guess I was thinking.
So that might be a
recommend it
procedural
with
challenge.
Conditions of, you know, the porch should, I mean, which is possibly what we'll do anyway. The porch should be more in keeping with the period of the house, but that's really vague. So I guess I'm just saying, you know, as a support for that kind of thing.
And on that note, then, having architects on.
We don't, but I
Okay,
was going to
So
say.
then, who are we collectively to say that it's meeting the period of the house? And then again, then we're back to the committee working on an application and then recommending approval. Like that's the part. So I don't know the answer to how much work you can do unless then those two people who did that recuse themselves. Like this starts to get really, really complicated. I think you can pass a recommendation that maybe says that there's materials submitted that from a heritage architect or similar credentialed person, that the design is in keeping as per your recommendation, maybe something like that. Again, that is asking an applicant to spend some more money, and that if you're just trying to get to the windows should be the same size and shape as they were before, then just say so. It doesn't need to be, we don't need to do a big dance.
Well,
right.
They're pretty ornate and they're you know, 3/2 and and that's going to be expensive. So maybe there's something that approximates it, that, you know, the supposed expertise of the committee that we could, you know, assist with, I guess is what I'm saying. But and the porch is something that, you know, I think we can only give really vague guidance there unless we say, well, it must have you know, 1 inch thick, 1 inch, 1.5 inch by 3/4 inch balusters with a 2.5 inch railing, etc.
I wonder if the opponent's contractor would like to speak to this at all. Like, do you have a plan that, or do you need help in developing one?
Good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, when it comes to the windows, specifically and the deck you've mentioned, we haven't purchased any material for those two individual projects. It's just falls into what I consider regular maintenance on the home. So the deck's pretty rough, so it needs to be it needs to be at least the deck boards replaced and the railing replaced, so it's not too complicated. We're not planning on changing the size or the dimensions in any way. It's just we want to make it new and safe. And the windows, yeah, because they're kind of they're just a single pane. Some of them are broke, some of them are cracked. We'd like to weatherproof the porch and replace those windows with something acceptable. So we'd be open to suggestions on what is acceptable.
Is it remaining an exterior porch?
Yes.
Like a closed-in exterior porch? So
Yes.
like a sun porch, okay. Have you considered alternatives like, plexiglass, for example, as a?
I haven't actually considered anything at this point. We just, we're trying to work through the work through the process now
Right.
to meet the requirements
Yeah.
of the committee.
Would you consider doing putting a little more into the porch that versus just kind of maintaining what's there and
Like to close it in and
sorry, I mean the side porch, the rear the pressure treated one.
oh,
Would, because I guess what I'm saying is there's already been a lot done, and then it would be nice if going forward with the rest of it, we could maybe pay some attention to some of these other details that are being replaced.
that's to the deck you're referring to?
Yeah, the
On the east
rear.
side.
Yeah,
Well, Charles can verify this, but we did talk about what he would like to see there. And his wishes were that he really doesn't want a bigger deck. He doesn't want to have something for entertaining or just
Yeah, no,
an
just-
entrance way. And
yeah, I guess I'm just saying in terms of the actual railing, the balusters and the handrail.
yeah, well, whatever is required to make it safe. Yeah, I guess to bring it up to code.
Certainly, I'd be prepared to, I'd be glad to get rid of those, the side of the deck, the handles that go down, it looks awful. And perhaps we can do something that would just improve it. But to go back to the original, I have
well,
no
yeah, that was
idea.
those,
I mean, I got the property in 1970 and my idea was to retire here.
No,
And that was my plan. I was hoping to move in this year. Well, I'm not going to be able to. But anyway, I would try to do the deck to look presentable. That's all I can say. With regard to the closed-in veranda on the Bayfield side, on the water side, the north side, I guess it would be. It was suggested that we put a heavier glass in, and instead of having true division, that we have trim on the inside that makes it look as if there's 3 windows on top and 2 windows on the bottom part. And that would be very similar to what the existing one is. My idea is to make that room better to serve the warmth of the house, because the wind off the bay is fierce.
mhm,
And it would give us better.
Right. Okay, well, and I hadn't realized you'd lived there that long.
Well, I have not lived there.
Oh, you've owned it.
I've owned it. I got it in the 1970s. And it was a rental property at that time.
Oh.
I got it from Kate Bavell through my parents. And I went to school in Meaford. I lived in Dr. John Finley's house directly behind the museum. I worked in Paul's Hotel where the museum is for summers. When my father was moved back to Toronto, in 1963, we got a cottage. It's the last cottage left on Grandview Drive. I've come to Meaford through the summers throughout that time, and I'm the owner of that property. But it's not winterized by any means,
Okay.
and I don't intend to.
I guess what I'm thinking is that because we have the opportunity now that this is coming up for a permit, if we say, okay, the work that's being done, even though it wasn't applied for, retroactively, we say it's okay, and I don't know if that's what everybody else agrees with, but that we might make some effort to kind of fix long ago mistakes, like whenever the porch was
Can
built,
I
it
ask-
might have been before 70.
For example, are the oh, what am I, the window, the shutters,
Yeah, I
are
was
they,
gonna bring that up.
they are probably not,
Yeah,
bear no relation to what would be originally on the building, whatever they.
No,
Pardon?
they are no relation.
yeah,
They were
I've actually
planned-
done a little illustration, you probably can't see, but removing the shutters, and I think.
Yeah, well, that would happen once the siding goes on.
So you weren't planning on replacing them after the fact then?
Well, they're just decorated.
Yeah, good.
I suppose decorated with just plain siding on there. People said it looks so bare. So we went ahead and put those shutters on, but
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think that that they're an enhancement anyway from a heritage standpoint.
right. Well, I'm not prepared to put them on and I
Yeah.
wouldn't be putting.
And I think this, again, we don't know what this house looked like when it was built, but this might be a place where window trim comes into play and everybody ignores it when they put in new windows. There's a picture actually in the agenda on page 44 of it's quite ornate, but it's showing in a wood frame construction, the fact of having a cell and some casing around it. I mean, that's a potential to consider as well.
Well, I haven't seen, I just got notice of the meeting at 12 o'clock. I drove from Toronto up here and Daryl just got it at the same time. And we coordinated to get here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, this would take a little more research too, because I don't know what was kind of characteristic of a late 1800s frame house in Meaford. If they had cells, if they had casing around the windows, that kind of thing, but.
I might say with regard to the windows on the west side of the house on the second floor. We decided to put in those new windows, which are a bit larger than the existing windows were, and they allow circulation of air in the second floor because it gets very hot on that second floor, and the old windows did not operate correctly. The new windows are more efficient and hopefully keep the cold air out from the bay. The new windows will let light into the second floor. The bedroom at the top of the stairs that's on the southwest corner of the house, small window that was originally there. It is very small bedroom. And in order to see anything in that room, you had to turn a light on, even in the daytime, to see. Considering the style, I point out that the house has bigger windows in many locations. The living room window, the bay window looking out on Psych Street on the main floor, the dining room window looking out on the east side looking toward the harbor is a fair size. And then what really, Daryl brought it to my attention that the larger windows, especially on the Psych side on the second floor, they now provide for ingress and egress. And in case a fire broke out and fire came up the stairway to the second floor, people on the second floor would be able to exit out from the new larger windows onto the roof of the veranda. And the roof of the veranda surrounds, as you are aware, the west and the north facing bedrooms on the second floor. Firemen could rescue people from going up on that veranda roof and breaking in through the windows to get anyone out if the place was on fire or smoke coming up the stairway from the main floor.
Can I ask a very quick question of somebody like Mr. Mitchner or Mr. Sullivan? We don't know, but it's my impression that probably horizontal siding was not in vogue at the time houses like this were built, and it would be
No,
very
it
apt.
was tin. It was a
Oh.
tin house.
It was
Oh,
probably,
Yeah, but what I was going to say is a more likely it would have been board and batten, that is with vertical siding, which might, really add to the fundamental design of the house. It would make it look more, I would say, stately, taller. And I just wonder, is that
I'm not an expert on that, but my opinion would be that it probably was clapboard siding originally.
so horizontal, in other words? You think so? Wow. Okay.
But there was nothing underneath the metal,
Under the mat.
like they didn't put anything, they didn't just put
There
it
was
over
wood
the
under
side.
the.
There was.
Yeah, did you look underneath?
What
Yeah.
I would call barn board underneath. Correct. Yeah, barn board underneath the metal. And then over top of the
Like
metal,
horizontal, kind of stacked.
the barn board was vertical.
Oh, it was, oh.
And
Possibly,
then the metal tin was 16-inch squares or there, and it was tacked on. And then the aluminum siding was over top of that.
You may be right then.
Well, I think it would actually add to the appeal of the building. I stand to be corrected, but at any rate, I think that we need to make a decision on the recommendation here. I think that, let me just say that if you could talk to any members of the committee, and they'd be more than happy to give you their, thoughts on any issues you wanted to discuss with them about design and so forth. None of us are architects or anything like that, but all of them have got a lot of practical experience and some good instincts on that. So, yes, go ahead, Liz.
One last thing, we are advisory people. And I think that, we've got a motion or an idea coming forward that when we have an application coming in the Heritage District, that application actually comes to this group, and that possibly the applicant can talk to us, which would save you a lot of time and save staff a lot of time. And we could probably put our 2 cents worth in and maybe help with this situation. Like, I'm looking at your entry door and thinking, is that original? It's like trim like this. And if it's barn board siding, then tin, then that was built like a dance hall that used to be across the road. So I think, we are advisory, and we'd be more than likely to probably come and just sit and talk. Maybe we could help. There are lots of expertise around the table.
Yeah, this is just about process, really, because I agree with all the information that Vic has brought up. And did you know, you bought the property in 1970. We didn't have a heritage district then.
No,
So
didn't.
you didn't, were you ever notified? I'm just wondering if there was a process from the town.
Well, it went on
In the
title,
future,
it went on
if-
title to all the properties in the heritage area.
Okay.
But it was under our understanding, we were just replacing the siding. And because the siding was cracked and broken, we thought we could do that. And when it came to the upstairs windows, Daryl found that some of them were not installed correctly. There was rotten wood. And for fire purposes and for other purposes, as I mentioned before, we decided that the window should be bigger. And I think that by doing that, the benefits of the larger windows, I think, far outweigh the idea of having smaller windows.
Yeah, my only question was just about the process. When new people possibly move into the district, I was wondering if the town should notify them that, yes, you are in a heritage district now. This was directed, I guess, at staff.
Denise?
So I'm not sure how we would do that, because that, I don't even know how the relationship between someone moving and us being able to notify them, like how we would necessarily know in our department. But one thing that some people do when they purchase a property is have a compliance letter completed that their lawyer would, they would submit to the building department. And in that process, it would come out that their zoning would be given and that they were in the district. Unfortunately, a number of people aren't doing those anymore. They're just purchasing properties without that letter. It's sometimes called a zoning compliance letter. It's sometimes called a property information report. It's the same thing. Maybe because of title insurance and stuff like that, people aren't doing it, but we do get a lot of them. I don't think we get nearly as many as the amount of sales that we have. So I'm not sure. So what happens often is we get a request for a tax certificate or one of those letters, which would have been given, they'd be getting that information already, or the lawyer advises our finance department that a new owner has taken ownership. So I'm not really sure how the relationship to telling, like someone would have to flag, hey, that might be in the district somehow. So I'm not really sure if it would work, but if people get that zoning compliance letter, they automatically find out.
Okay. So I'm going to call the motion at this point. Do you have anything urgent, Councillor Greenfield?
If I may, Your Worship, question to Denise and a comment. Our municipal website, does it not in some area have a picture of the heritage district, or if it doesn't have it, you could have, I think, quite easily, whether people would check it out or not. The other thing is, in the last few years, people have been buying properties online without ever seeing the property other than a few pictures on the screen. I just wanted to say that it sounds as if the replacing of a number of these windows, there has been structural work that has had to be done, and that's got to be an improvement. That's got to be a big plus to the building. It really makes me wonder, this house sitting there on the northeast corner of Bayfield, and I know how the northeast winds hit there. It's done very well to survive, and certainly any kind of structural improvements will hopefully prolong and value the future of it. Thanks.
Okay. So, Sarah, yeah.
One question, have you checked with the museum to find out if you can find out anything more about that place? Because that was a whole park at one point many years ago with the dance hall. It was quite a predominant situation. And with the postmaster's house just around the corner, it might be worthwhile to check with the museum to see if you can find out more details.
I'd be quite prepared to do that. I know them at the museum because I brought things to the museum.
Sure.
So I can try. I guess also going back in records, going back to the early 1900s might prove something, but I'll try that. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion to approve the heritage permit for 191 Psych Street North, all in favor? Sorry, I beg your pardon.
I like to put some conditions. I think that with the enclosed porch, that we either the applicant should take steps to keep the original windows and retrofit them with plexiglass as a storm window or whatever, or replace them with something very similar if they're being replaced. And also have it on there that the side porch, the east porch, whatever that is, that's being basically replaced, that it use handrails and balusters typical of the period and be painted.
then to alter that to that degree. Can you draft that, Alex? Just a motion that the permit be approved with the condition that, and you can give her the wording there, Vic, if you can.
Sorry, I just want to check one thing. Are we within the scope of what this report is asking by amending this motion? Like, is this, I'm just checking first before we go ahead.
Yes, so it's my understanding, so one of the things that the permit is requesting is replacement of some of the veranda materials that says it says repair or replace in my report, but in the list that the applicant had, it mentions those windows specifically. And so I think if I understand what you're asking is you want some language in there that would mean that they would have to replicate in some way the shape and dimensions of those windows. So including the three lights on top. As I noticed, one of the windows actually only has one glass on the bottom and three on the top, and then some of the other ones have two, which is kind of, so do you want to be really specific about it just so that we don't have an issue later with.
Right. Well, that's where I was saying, if we could consult afterwards, but which are there two of? I think it's close.
One on the right hand side. I think the window on the right hand side of the door, possibly the bottom glass was broken, so it's only one piece of glass instead of two. Now it's 3/1 instead of 3/2.
Well, yeah, most of them are the 3/2, so I would be saying something like, that's what they should be trying to recreate.
And could that be done just with the trim work that we talked about?
Interior trim?
Some kind of a trim piece that was added rather than having the window structurally have the glass split?
I would think if there was, it would have to be exterior. Otherwise, it's lost behind the reflection. At the same time, I guess plexiglass does the same kind of thing. I've done that with stained glass, but
Possibly the door that's going to be replaced on that closed porch. If you're going to replace that door anyways, could it be replaced with a heritage style door?
Are you stating the exterior door coming into the porch?
Correct.
The exterior door coming into the closed-in porch.
Yeah, what you would actually see from the street.
Yeah,
Correct.
our idea was to put an aluminum or a vinyl, was it?
An exterior steel door.
It wouldn't be it would have storm and screen. Because we need air to come into the room. So was it to be a aluminum? Aluminum, white color.
what's there?
Yeah, similar to what's.
Only the one
One of
that's
those
there is a
inside
wooden
frames.
one that's
Yeah,
been
but I mean,
broken.
similar with
Yeah.
the window over, almost a half,
Yeah,
50% window over 50% solid.
if,
Right.
Is there paneling in that? I can't see, or would there be
Well,
paneling?
somebody put a wood over one of the windows because it was broken and the dog had broken it or a child had broken it. So, and it doesn't fit right. The air comes under the bottom of the door.
if there was a heritage style replacement vinyl door, that would be better than just one you would see at Home Depot. Do you know what I mean?
We'll try
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Thank you.
So have we got those, that motion sort of amended, Alex, that it,
So what I'm gathering is that we are adding a clause to this motion, just so I'm correct, about regarding the windows specifically. What exactly is the wording here?
Yeah, I think it's a condition, correct? Like that, I know we've had those before. I think it was in the last permit in the first two permits of the three parts or whatever. Were conditions, if I remember.
they were conditions? So just, we're basically approving, the motion as it is. with the condition that the windows be the window format should be preserved. This is dealing with the special windows with three panes on top and one on the bottom. And the door to the which door was it? And the storm door on the outside be of heritage character.
Okay. And the what, sorry?
The east porch. Deck,
Yes.
whatever.
Yes.
What specifically about the porch?
That it should have a handrail and baluster. The railings basically should be typical of the period. That's about as specific as I can get, I guess.
Okay,
And painted, sorry, thank you.
okay, so the amendment, it was moved by Vic, so I just need a seconder.
Oh, yes, okay.
please.
We need a seconder for Vic's motion, seconded by Liz.
Mhm.
All in favor? And that is carried. And so the motion now to be voted on is,
So what I have is that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend to Council of the Municipality of Meaford that the heritage permit for 191 Psych Street North be approved with the following conditions. Number one, that the window format should be preserved. And then I kind of jotted it down. I can kind of tweak it later, but 3 panes on top and 1 on the bottom. Number 2,
3 and 2, and that's
Sorry.
the enclosed.
and
porch.
2
Yes,
panes on the bottom.
3 and 2.
And then the storm door on the outside be of heritage character or maintain heritage character. And then the east porch should have a handrail and banister typical of the period or,
Baluster,
sorry,
baluster.
baluster. Okay,
Already,
Just before we vote on this, how do we know that this will be done to what we think are the standards?
go ahead, Mr. Boyd.
Like with all permits, it's, if it isn't followed through with, then it's an enforcement issue. There is no mechanism to come back to this committee or council to say the work's done, we're finished. It is just part of this thing gets attached to the building permit, and then through that process, there's that, and then worst case scenario it becomes an enforcement issue, which is
So
not
when
the
it comes
best.
to the door, we have heritage information that should be on file, and it gives examples of what a heritage house should look like. Do you have that information? Maybe
We
you
can
should
get
go
that
to
for you.
municipal offices and see if you could get that information, because it give you some design. And because you know, you're not going to get this kind of thing, I don't think, at Home Depot. You know, if you want to replicate what was there.
We do have such a document. It is.
I don't know specifically
Oh,
what document you're
well, you know
referring
what it
to
is.
because you haven't stated the title,
okay,
so I don't know what you're
So
thinking.
it is, it is the downtown heritage conservation district plan. And there are examples in there of doors, of windows, and a variety of things of that nature, which will be very helpful. It's a little, I want to say maybe 10 pages. Oh, there it is right there. So it's more than that. So does anyone know if that's available at the municipal office? It should maybe be.
Of course, all official documents are available and it's online as well.
Yeah, okay, and it is online. All right. So are we ready for the vote? The motion, I think we all remember what it was. So all in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. And thank you, gentlemen, for your patience today. It has to go to council. Council has to approve it. And at that point, then I think if you have the building permit, yeah, I should not be telling you, Denise can.
Thanks you, Mr. Mayor. So just to clarify, so yes, it goes to council for approval, and then we issue a heritage permit, which they can attach to the building permit If you don't need a building permit and it's just something else, then they still need a heritage permit, then they have a copy. But they can attach it to cloud permit.
Oh, I think you do.
So I can answer that. So the building department can clarify whether you need a building permit. And my understanding is whenever you're changing the size of a window, like if you're making the window larger on a building, you need a building permit. So I believe that in the upstairs windows, a building permit is required. But it wasn't possible to get one until you got the heritage permit.
I think I had a conversation with the chief building inspector yesterday, and he told me that a deck that is 24 inches off the ground would require a building permit. I think you definitely would need a building permit. Mr. Voigt?
So you can apply for the building permit at any time. So they'll, the
Welcome back to our Heritage Advisory Committee meeting. I think we had a little bit of a hiccup with the computer, and as a result, we had a short recess, but we didn't conduct any business until we were able to come back and have the public join us. And I just at this point in time at after 5 o'clock in the afternoon want to thank staff for hanging in with us here, because we have still got a considerable bit of business to conduct, and all these things relate to the desires of the Heritage Committee. And I really appreciate the fact that you're working with us, and that you're doing it, you know, and not getting paid overtime. So thank you very much. So the first item here for consideration is an update to proposed terms of reference. And the recommendation is that the Heritage Advisory Committee approve a draft terms of reference to be provided to council for their consideration. I'm going to turn it over to staff to speak to that.
Sorry, can I please get a mover and a seconder?
Oh, okay, we can do that. A mover, and it's Mr. Sullivan, and it's seconded by Liz Harris. And on we go.
Thank you, Worship. In the interest of time, we'll make the not so crazy assumption that everyone's read this. I will quickly highlight that this was presented as a motion to explore this from Jim at the end of last council term, and because of all the things, this is the first time that we've been able to bring this forward. Staff have noted a few suggested language changes. They're essentially in a general term, the characteristics relating to cleaning up the language and being more to the point succinct. That is just a recommendation so that we're not kind of restating things, and it's outlined. The reasons for that are in the report. And then the only other thing, there's two additional terms that staff is suggesting be considered. I think the main crux of that is that, as we learned from our heritage expert, that because of this broadening scope, it should actually be best be done by two heritage committees, one that's focused on the district and one that focuses on the whole community. That's what we learned. We're saying, hey, perhaps that should be considered. And the second one then is the membership of the heritage district one. If you were to go forward with two, that we should make all efforts to have persons who have a vested interest, either living in or owning properties in the district, be members of the committee, just like we would do with any neighborhood. We wouldn't say we're doing a neighborhood planning exercise in Annan, but no one from Annan needs to be on the committee. So this is the same kind of thing. With that, the staff are here to answer questions. This really is Jim's to propose and explain the wherefores and why.
Right, put your mic on. Yeah.
Thanks, Rob. I know it's late, and I knew it was going to be late, and I'm still going to say what I'm going to say because I've waited 8 months for this. So it's about the terms of reference. This is just a start to a discussion on the terms, and I want that to include staff, council, and member input. As per my discussions, I spoke earlier to Bert Duclos. I know you said you did too. I've been talking back and forth to Bert for about 20 years. Bert said, this is a quote, I have to reread it. Your draft terms of reference is very good. Should be a good start for the committee, council, and staff to come up with a new, more relevant one. And that is exactly what I would like to do. That's what I would like to bring forward today. And Jan, who's not here today, has an actual something to go forward as a motion at the end after I finish this. But I'm going to get this out because, like I said, I waited 8 months. I'd like to thank Director Voigt and welcome the suggested refinements and spending the time to review the terms of reference. I know how busy you are, and as I said, it will be a work in progress. There are decisions to be made. Length of member terms, duration of terms of the committee, should it overlap council, choice of the chair. Some municipalities actually have a council member as chair with a councillor as liaison. How many meetings in a year? Should they be monthly? Do we skip summer months? Should meetings be accessible to accommodate 8 to 5 members of the public? Some people actually work, I found out. And that might help to attract members who do work. Who's responsible for setting the agenda? Who will be available? Who can have input into the agenda? These questions can't be answered today, not in one day, not at one meeting. I do realize that terms of reference, as you mentioned, may appear wordy. Passages not needed can be removed, but they are there to be inclusive of the policy that I could find, okay? The ones I reviewed were from four pages to 28 pages. Although 8 terms of reference were reviewed, I concentrated on the ones used and specifically singled out in the Heritage Toolkit. That was Chatham-Kent, as well as Guelph, Markham, and Niagara-on-the-Lake. Larger municipalities, and you mentioned about professional heritage staff. Larger municipalities, medium-sized municipalities, even some smaller ones, have planning staff with heritage experience or heritage planners. Markham has actual heritage staff. They have a manager of planning heritage planning, Reagan Hutchison, who he helped me 10 years ago when we just started another heritage committee in the 905 area. As I said, this is intended as a beginning, and including such as overview, which may not seem needed because staff, the members of the committee, and at least one other member of council knows that statutory role. But it shows the relationship between the Heritage Committee and council, and perhaps not all members of council, particularly a newly elected member, and certainly not members of the public, know of this relationship or that role. The introductory statement in the statutory and non-statutory roles, I think, is the defining part of those roles. Like I said, all of this can be discussed between the necessary people, staff, the committee, and council member. The reports to council, they're part of the terms of reference, I believe needs revision. That's the terms that I've got before you today. But there are salient points here regarding the advisory role to council that include budget and shared committee input on staff reports. To finalize, I heartily support increasing the number of members to this committee, additional members from the district in particular. And although support of the Meaford Heritage District is vital for this committee, that is only a small portion of Meaford's very rich heritage landscape. There are countless number of properties outside the district in its urban area, and St. Vincent, Sydenham have some of the most spectacular stone homes in Ontario. I believe our mandate is all of Meaford. Thank you, and I look forward to working with this committee. As is mentioned in a part of these terms, quote from it, the immediacy of such conservation and heritage planning comes from the fact that, unfortunately, what is not saved and preserved today cannot be saved and preserved tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. I think we're
I'm sorry, you thought I was finished, didn't you?
I did.
Jan had a motion to be put forward. She's not here today. I phoned her this morning. She's in very rough shape from a bad fall. And if I can read out this motion, whereas instead of the motion that's before you now, if we could have this one, whereas terms of reference are the foundation for the operation of the Heritage Advisory Committee, a subcommittee be established for the purpose of producing a draft report on the terms of reference for the municipality of Meaford Heritage Advisory Committee. The draft report will be presented to the Heritage Committee. I spoke to Jan about this. She recommended 3 months, not 12. So 3 months from the formation of the subcommittee, with at least 2 interim information reports during this period. Now, those interim timings could be subject to what the subcommittee decides on. The subcommittee will consist of 2 to 3 volunteer Municipal Heritage Committee members, 1 representative of staff, and 1 representative of council. It'd be a mixed dialogue process of conservation, email, and phone with optional structured minutes format. Will allow for research and development of ideas. And the mandate of this subcommittee is to provide an efficient working environment with regard to the preferences and restrictions governing the specific areas of elected member, employee, and volunteer. Could this be put as a motion? I'm going to ask. Yeah.
Mr. Voigt?
Through your worship, I'm gonna try my best on this. For what's under consideration now is the first item. I believe that would need to be put to bed. I typically, at council, motions are made and then addressed the next day, I think at the next meeting, because there's a notice of motion. I'll look to the mayor and Councillor Greenfield on your memory, maybe also Denise. I think we don't quite follow that strict a rule, and perhaps this would be suggested as an amendment of rewording what you have, because this is getting to the same place. And then I think we're probably okay with that. If I can just highlight a couple of things in response for consideration on that. This is the fun one. Markham has a population of 342,000 people and a municipal budget of $669 million. So just know that is nowhere near comparable to us, other than that they've got old buildings too. So we got to be really careful about what we're comparing here. Unless council wants to tax ourselves to a level of getting $669 million. Let's see what that looks like. I think two other just, and their details, and I don't think it would change how we get to what you're suggesting, but the committee's input on items is done in this forum and maybe could be done through subcommittees in that, but I would suggest it needs to stand alone from the staff reports. For example, as a professional planner, I have to be able to, there's a whole body of ethics that stands behind how we get our designations and that, and my reports need to be written by me and others that I'm comfortable that we have the same professional opinion moving forward. And so, like, I won't sign someone else's report unless I've been involved in that. And so having committee input, that's the committee's input, it's not staff's input. Council, I would say, also wants to see clearly who is saying what. That doesn't mean that there aren't mechanisms to get to that point of working collaboratively on an item. I think is more the intent, not us sitting down and writing the same report. So I think we can get to that. And then overall, if this motion goes forward, we'll just be reminding staff or council that they should consider any changes to this committee in terms of the structure, timing, and all that within your framework for all your committees, right? We shouldn't have each committee running its own schedule and all that. That just becomes very, very problematic. And that would be a reminder that I think council would make of themselves anyway, right? No, there's people sitting around the table are going to say, well, how does this impact economic development committee and accessibility? We have to have some sort of coherence amongst all the different committees. I'll just put those two items out there.
Yeah. And I'd like to hear from some others here too. I think that as I understand it, the only statutory committees are heritage, accessibility. Is there another one?
No, so heritage is not required. You can, if you have a committee, you need at least 5 members. You do not have to have a committee.
Okay.
But the other one is accessibility is required, and I believe that's where you need Matt.
I've come to the conclusion that in my mind that we want to reorganize, like the council as one of its priorities wants to reorganize its committees, but I think that and so the the accessibility committee would have to be organized much the way it already is. And I'm coming to the conclusion that the heritage committee would need to be organized very similar to the way it is. That is to say that, you know, there's a close, you know, relationship with the staff component, so that we've got the planning and the expertise, you know, behind what we're trying to achieve here. So I personally am not wanting to have a process that takes us off, you know, for even 3 months, that doesn't get us like if we know that in fact we need to do something that with heritage that is not too far removed from what we have. We just need to we want to be able to create committees, task forces, and so whatever to, you know, research certain things and report back to us. But I just so I think that it is different from our other committees. I think that the other committees we can do them all with one fell swoop, I hope, largely getting rid of a lot of the burden on staff. This committee, I think, is going to have to continue to rely on the planning department. So so that gives you the opportunity, I suppose, to take 3 months to try and do it differently, but I'm not sure that it necessarily needs 3 months either. So, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Rob, for reminding me what the budget is of Markham. I didn't have to be reminded. I'm one of the ones who used to live down there and work down there. But what I did is I used their budget and I used the expertise that they have down there to put together what you see in front of you, that terms of reference. I'm not a heritage planner, but there are heritage planners that have done these, and that's why I used Markham's. Reagan has been around for a long time. He's the manager of heritage planning down there. He's great. I looked at his, like I said, the one that was in the workshop, and you're correct. If there's no heritage committee, then it's not statutory. But once one is formed, it works under the Ontario Heritage Act, so it becomes statutory. So that's I'm not correcting you. I'm just adding on to what you said. Thanks.
What do other people think on, you know, the proposal? And like, we're really looking at two different things here, but let's try and decide, okay, you want to just deal with your.
Can I play the role of Matt here without the accent?
Okay.
So I believe what is before you is Jim's wording there. I think to be clean, I think you got two options. Choose which of the wordings feels most comfortable, or somehow mash them together. And then we got to think of what that wording is. So we're not, I think it's fair late in the day. It is a committee that is advisory in nature. I don't think we need to go line by line, second, this and that. If you can come together and say, choose this one or that one, or how you put them together, and then discuss that to move forward. Does that work?
Okay. So let's hear from others. Liz?
Yeah, having worked with the Parks Board on terms of reference, there was a reason why we wanted, you know, the allocated number of meetings must be, and I think it was 6, which is no way with all the things that are going on. Same thing here. And I think it should be discretionary when we meet, because as we can see, we've been at this since 3 o'clock and it's now 5:21. And we've had 2 big things in front of us, which has taken a lot of time. And we don't meet often enough to keep everybody up to speed. And these issues are really thick. And I think that definitely needs to be at the advice of.
On what they Councillor Greenfield?
Thanks, Your Worship. We'll just on the subject of frequency of meetings. I I hear what Liz is saying. Certainly, today is a perfect example. Now, we may not get the perfect example every 2 months, but today, obviously, there's a number of factors. There's from what I've heard, some unfortunately, it seems to me that perhaps some individuals haven't just played by the rules as much as they should have. So it's just a lack of communication. But both of these instances were involved dollars and cents, and big money, big investments by these folks, that definitely important to them. My architect, my contractor, and I guess I can't help looking at these situations from the side of a contractor, just how that affects their schedule, their timing. Geez, I've got this material ordered and it's sitting in the backyard there, and I'm not moving forward. So anyway, yeah, I think definitely we have to have a proposed fixed schedule, but if something comes up that needs immediate or faster consideration, then I think I for all parties involved, I think it would be advisable if we could have a special meeting, and that is not easy, because I know by looking at our council calendar, and it certainly must be the same or worse for staff, how many days are available. Like you can't just call a special meeting in 48 hours. That's just not possible. But I think if we could, if something falls into that emergency realm, then yeah, let's do our very best to get together and deal with it. That's just one point. I want to thank Jim for bringing his proposal forward. There's a lot of good things in it, a lot of good terms, and other than to get satisfied, to get settled, I've been quite happy with the way the Heritage Committee has has operated, and I just think if there was a little bit more flexibility for us to get together and say this is important, this needs to go forward, and it's not just for the individual who's doing the building. It's for the benefit of the municipality. Hopefully that their projects are going to be a positive project for the entire municipality.
Vic, did you wish to speak?
No, I don't.
We're trying to choose then between, just two approaches to setting this up. You go ahead again and
trying to get this thing done like you are. Could we include the proposed terms of reference as it is in there now, and include at the end, include provisions for a subcommittee to review? So we're not actually having a brand new one, we're just making a provision in that original one. Could that be done the same as we've done for heritage permits? No? Matt's not here.
Yeah, through your worship, that's kind of what I was suggesting is, again, the call it kind of a friendly amendment. We're not going to wordsmith it too much. I think Jan's was specific in areas where yours wasn't, but you get to the same place, because I think the ask or the recommendation / ask to council is to enable this advisory committee and stakeholders and all the people, including council, to undertake this work. And here's some suggested good framework to start from. I think that's kind of if someone asked me what is this about on the street, that's kind of the way I would describe it. It's not we're not at a, and I think you made it quite clear, not at a stage saying we want this thing exactly as worded, approved. Council, are you okay with it? It's here's a good start. Please let us and give us the resources to do this work to make this a better terms of reference.
It's just an example.
And I like, your suggestion that we actually have separate committees, one for the Downtown Heritage Conservation District and one for the rest of the municipality. I think there's a lot of merit in that. And so can we just, how do we word, can we just add to this motion that we're going to also develop a subcommittee to finalize things? Does that work?
Yeah, that works. So we'll just do, I guess we'll kind of amend the motion to add language regarding, we don't have that particular language right now, but we're looking to add language regarding coming up with some sort of subcommittee structure. So if we have a mover and a seconder for the amendment to approve the draft terms of reference and to add a section about a subcommittee, like along those lines, and then we can vote on that and we can move on.
Yes, I think it's important to understand that the subcommittee is going to come up with a final proposal as to how this is, shaped, how it's worded, and okay.
I think if we can just so it's clear that that is in reference to Jan's language as read by Jim, so that we can pull those sentences out there and we don't need to kind of make up words.
Sorry, now I'm confused. Are we talking about a subcommittee taking this task of the terms of reference and doing it on their own, or are we, because right now the motion is to pass the draft terms of reference and to provide it to council for their consideration.
Yeah, I think
so. I was under the assumption we're adding language in here to also talk about subcommittees and ensure that council is considering that when they're looking at the terms of reference, not a subcommittee is going to take this, and because I don't think we can do that at this point. I don't think it would be productive.
So we'll just pretend these folks aren't here, apparently. So I think what we have is we're walking back the part of council adopt these as the terms.
Okay.
We're saying using the language from Jan's that talks about subcommittee, some reference to timing that is very ambitious. Because 3 months also, there's a month called December where there's Christmas and things. So, but we'll reference that and use the example of Jim's as the starting point to do this work. So the ask is something like getting direction and resources from council to undertake that work as Jan describes, to come up with something like what Jim described. And we're pretending that's a very light amendment. Yeah. Does everyone around the horseshoe think they understand what I said? Because then we can, because it's mostly about them understanding what the words, and then we'll figure out what that was.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe.
Yeah, I think
All I want to make sure is that we are not stuck with what the parks got stuck with. And that was a tough terms of reference, which was not put forward by the committee that worked on that.
We have no way of knowing what council decides and what the process will lead to.
Well,
So-
I think it's a bit dangerous to hand something to council that they can't interpret or don't really know what we're really talking about either. So we got to be careful that we give them a clear idea of what we're talking about here. So I think that I like your everybody's approach to this, but I think it's premature to take it to council and say this is what we want, unless we want to actually propose, Jan's proposal and see if council wants to support that.
That was my understanding, that the ask of council is, so if we go through, what is the storyline here? This advisory committee, because there'll be a staff report that goes along with this, right? So it'll say this advisory committee has identified the need for updated terms of reference. Jim has provided some information on that. Jan has provided information on how to go about that, as opposed to just this committee taking it upon themselves and saying, council, what do you think? Yes or no? It's an ask of council saying, can this committee undertake the work
Yes.
to define what is the right number of meetings? Even when the public says, it's like, well, if you meet every week, we can't come, right? So there's a lot of players, and that's what that report would say. So the ask will be coming to council. Is council willing to give this group and then dedicate staff time to support this group to do that work?
Does this not pertain to most advisory committees? Because like certainly with the parks, that one, if there's a big development coming, then that requires so that they don't have to meet every 3 months. They, maybe sometimes have to meet every month until they can get through that thing. I think what I'm just trying to make sure that we don't end up with 3-hour meetings like this, where we've got all these things to discuss and they're being pushed through because we know we have to get out of here and we're going to have to wait another 3 months to meet again. I think that word discretionary timing should be embedded in that document. Right.
And I think that's what would come up through discussion. Just so you know, we have not been meeting on the schedule of this committee. This committee, by the terms of reference you have now, has to meet twice a year. And we've been meeting more than that. And we've been meeting when there's applications. Like the last one we saw, I can't hold a meeting with this committee until that application is in play. Again, I can't do preemptive. Well, let's talk about a house because someone might do something. So that's the same nature of what the planning department has when applications come through the door. We don't get to say, sorry, no more applications, we're busy. When there's a rush, we deal with them and it's over the top. And then sometimes there's a few months where nothing comes through the door. So you're already working under that discretionary end of things. It just is, this happens to be a busy meeting. All this is, I think Jim's thing is to have this conversation, to figure it out. It's not adopt the thing, give council, please give us the chance to figure it out.
So Alex, have you got wording you think that what works for you, or do you want us to actually write it out for you? Well,
Are you talking about Jan's motion? Or, okay,
It's basically saying what Rob has mentioned.
yes, so
Rob's trying to get this done quickly, as I am.
I honestly don't care how long this takes. I just want it to be a motion that you all can pass. I'm just trying to find ways to get to something that I think is achieving what you want. In simplest terms, what we have actually before us is Jim has a recommendation, pass this on to council. So it doesn't feel like anyone's just okay. Even Jim doesn't really, that's not the sum total of what he wants. It's the ask is, can we come up with a new terms of reference? It might be that simple. Do you boil it down to pass a recommendation to council to update the terms of reference and give us the resources to do that.
An option might be simply to make a decision that we will do this way And let's see if in 3 months' time, we're able to bring a finished product to council and say, these are the terms of reference that we would like to operate under. And it's yours to approve or tell us no.
But if I'm not mistaken, the way the work of this committee has to happen now. So first of all, that thing, and I'm not trying to be problematic, staff has no direction to support you in that work. And you working together means we'd have to have, and maybe it works, every week, you sit here in this room and then talk about it. I don't know if that's the most efficient way.
Well,
Like
I
I'm thinking about, again, with the way we have to hold meetings and all that, I think the ask needs to be to go to council to say, can we do this as a subcommittee or whatever you, task force, whatever you want to call yourselves. It's just so that we can get out of the need to have quorum and public notice and all that stuff.
Yeah,
And then how do you get the public into the process? And
I totally agree with what Rob's saying, because I think that discussion of having two groups, one country, one town, is going to be for council a tough one to discuss.
Mhm.
And so it's going to lead them off into another direction. I really think that if we just broadband it, and maybe we do the 3 months. And I mean, there's so many other things going on. This is not top of the list. But we as heritage people really want to get out into the country and also designate our lives to downtown and work on the back with Main Street when they get established. So how do we do this so that it's worded in a loosey way?
if
Working
I
on
were to
something.
do this again, and this is a trust thing, so you'll have to trust that the staff report says a lot of these things. Now, the minutes will say a bunch of it, but is referencing the two suggested approaches, or one is suggested new terms of reference, one is an approach. Perhaps the motion is that this committee, recognizing the need for an updated terms of reference, is asking council and I can't think of a better word, but the direction / authorization, whatever what it's supposed to be called, to undertake, and I would use the word a public process, because you should have, again, if you're trying to expand this out to the whole community, there should be, you gotta let folks know, guess what, you can do this thing now. It's not just going to be in the Heritage District. So a public process to come up with said updated terms of reference and defining a timeline on when that gets done. So that way you can do meetings, workshopy things, whatever, and council can say, sure, let them go do it, or let them go do it and you from staff will support them, or what have you.
The recommendation is that the Heritage Advisory Committee ask council if the Heritage Advisory Committee can establish a subcommittee to draft terms of reference to be provided to council for their consideration. Like, not perfect, not
If you
beautiful,
can just
but-
ask, I would ask if you could just add a public process to that, so that again, you can get past the who you can talk to and what quorum-y kind of thing.
Okay, so have you got it, or do you want me to give you one more go at that, Alex?
Yes, I'm just thinking a little bit here. Because I understand what you're saying, but I'm also, there is another option. Okay, we can just keep it how we have it. Let's just go with that. Let's just keep it this way. So we're basically looking for an amendment to the first motion for, we're looking to bring this to council, for council to then. Okay.
So I just, I guess the motion is to change the recommendation to that the Heritage Advisory Committee ask council or ask council's approval to establish a subcommittee and a public process to draft terms of reference
Mhm.
which will then be, presented to council for their consideration.
So just mover, seconder, vote.
Well,
Or sorry,
to change it and then a vote on that.
yeah, so you are so I just need a seconder to the amendment that you just noted.
Well, I think that would this be your motion, maybe your motion that you agree with this wording and you're seconding it
Okay.
and all in favor? Okay, okay.
Now you need to vote on the actual thing. All you've done is change the language, I'm trying to be mad. It's hard. So now you need to just vote again on exactly what was just said. Yeah.
So you need to hear. Okay, seconded by, okay. And again, the recommendation is that the Heritage Advisory Committee ask council if the committee can establish a subcommittee and a public process to draft new terms of reference for the Heritage Committee to be presented to council. Not beautiful English, but all in favor, and that's passed. Okay. Which brings us down to, I think, one or two remaining matters. If you're good to continue here, the rail shed consideration. The recommendation, you've all read this. Item C, yes. Did I jump one?
Yes.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry, I did too. Okay.
And your worship, I am recusing myself from this discussion.
Oh, yes, okay. All right, thank you kindly. So, yes, okay. Mover, you're moving it. Jim, at least Harley seconded. If you got that all right, and well, you don't have to vote for that. So speak to this.
This work plan was in January when we weren't even a committee. So some of the things on here aren't relevant anymore, and I would really like to have more input from the committee on what we would like to work on over the next 4 years, not just this 1 year. It's 4 years. So I would prefer to defer this for now. To put this forward to council wouldn't be inclusive as far as I'm concerned. So I have been trying to get more input and maybe staff could help on this too. If there's something that you could think of that the committee should be doing over the next 4 years. I mean, over the term.
And we might, I'm not 100% sure that it will be a 4-year term. I mean, that depends on the terms of reference that are, developed by the subcommittee. So
Over the next term then.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So it might be too early to actually put a plan, to give a plan like this to council if it doesn't include all the things that maybe we would like to put on it.
The committee might, for example, want input into the public realm priority that the council has, and also the greening of the market square. Like those are two priorities that council has that the committee may want to make presentations on, or something like those are possibilities.
So could we bring this back in 3
Yep,
months
I
when
think
we're going
that's
to
a
be?
good idea.
Yep, the terms back.
So is that a motion then to just change this motion to one where
So we're looking at a motion to defer.
yeah, that's all. Yeah. That's
Okay,
simple,
and
yeah.
could we be a little bit more specific about when we'd like to defer to? Like, are we looking for?
In 3 months.
Maybe we just defer to January.
I think
Yes.
this is a big project again that, we want to really think about.
Is it safe to say that this is connected with the terms of reference? Like this can't be done till the terms of reference is done kind of thing, like this over that, or?
No, it could be done Like it could be done separately.
Okay,
The mayor has just suggested January might be a good time, and
okay.
I agree.
Yep, so we'll just need a mover, a seconder, and a vote on deferring.
Okay, so it's moved by Jim, seconded by Liz to defer to January. All in favor? Oh, you wanted to speak to this?
Yes, no, I'm not sure. Can there be discussion on a motion to defer? Is that?
We just voted. That's,
Oh, okay. All right.
well, we haven't voted yet?
No.
Okay, then go ahead.
Well, I'm just, I'm just wondering about the last two, the second last and the last bullet on the list here. Plaquing program for the sesquicentennial. I'm just thinking if we hold off 3 months on this, that's January, am I right? Or it won't be December, I don't think.
That's a good point.
Maybe there's need for some discussion on that before. And the other one, or the last one, which is coming up. Soon to be delivered in on our agenda discussion. I'm just wondering how, by deferring it, this would impact those last two. Is it going to jeopardize them?
And I'm just going to give you one little piece of advice. That idea of the Heritage Committee being on the Georgian Bay Harbor Land Tribunal hearing, that is just not a practical possibility because they're not into the Ontario Land Tribunal. Has nothing to do with the heritage aspects of this at all, and it would just be, the cart before the horse, and not like it just wouldn't be entertained. So that could be stricken.
Yes, I have had some discussions about that. That's right.
Denise?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think, so the rail shed piece, because we're talking about it next, I don't know that just parking this would change that because we're still going to talk about it in a different, like slightly different way. The plaque program, though, I totally understand the timing issue here. Is it something that the committee would be interested in just pulling that piece out and bring that back to like a next meeting of
Yes, I
like,
think
hey, we'd
that'd be
like
a
to work
great
on it?
idea, for sure.
I actually was going to bring that up because of the Midas Mart place today.
So I don't know, rather than parking the whole thing, just, I mean, the idea of this, my understanding, and I'm working off my phone and looking on the screen now because my computer's dead, but my understanding was that these were just these were to be considered as potential. There could be things added to this list
Yes.
or taken away, right? It was more for discussion of what a work plan could include. And so because of that, you could park the rest of it if you don't feel like it's appropriate timing right now. But take anything really timely out, like the second last one, perhaps.
Lacking individually, like I don't think that needs to be an item to be considered. I think we already talked about it before when the demolition permit was granted. And I think we talked about having a plaque in that space, and that would work in beautifully with the 150. If we could just proceed with that.
There might be some money involved in a plaquing program, and I think council would have to be aware of that and possibly a budget for it.
And I think we go ahead.
I feel like I'm jumping in all of a sudden. I think I looked at plaquing programs at a couple municipalities not that long ago, maybe last year, and some of them actually have a fee. So if you want a plaque, the Heritage Committee will get you one if you apply, and then the person actually who requests it pays for that plaque. It's pretty nominal sometimes, especially if you're doing if you can get a good deal on a bunch. So it's just something to throw out there.
I'm just saying that I was only thinking about one plaque in particular. But if we're thinking about plaquing the whole downtown core,
Yeah.
that's a big undertaking. That's a huge job.
No,
When we
I
don't
think
really know
that's
much.
what one of the things that this then there is a meeting coming up of this
Yeah.
task force that's going to work on the with representation from all of the groups and organizations. So I think it'll come up there, and I think there's probably going to be some budget for this. So I wouldn't be too
So
worried.
I'm going to be at that meeting as a Rotarian,
Okay.
so I could bring that up if that's okay with
Sure.
everybody. With
Sure.
Heritage, yeah, okay.
So now I'm sorry, I've lost the train here. What do we do we how do we want to deal with this actual report on a work plan? Do we want to adopt it or do we want to defer it?
Could we defer this until the next meeting, which we hope will be this year? Harley?
Meredith, you have an idea?
Through you, your worship, I think that's a good idea, Jim. I think another suggestion might be to defer the work plan to the next meeting, but with the exception of the plaquing program for sesquicentennial, and maybe that item is extracted, or perhaps you defer the work plan until a later date, until next year. But you discuss the plaquing program at the next meeting. Just some thoughts.
Mhm.
Yes. One gets brought up at the next meeting. Could we do that? We can.
Okay. So do we have to have two votes again here?
So we're still deferring the work plan till the first meeting in January. And we are going to pull the point about the plaquing program for the next meeting, correct? So I guess that we've changed it a little bit, so I'll just need a mover, a seconder, and a vote, and then we can vote on the motion as amended. So mover, seconder, and then we're gonna vote, and then we'll vote again on the motion as amended.
So that is moved by Jim and
Yep.
seconded by Harley. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you for simplifying that.
Mhm.
And then can we deal with the rail shed in 5 minutes? Oh, yes, yeah, come on in.
You can go get him.
So we're on to item yes, C, item 7C. And it's the railway shed. So do you want to speak to this? This is your motion, I think, Jim? Yep.
Sorry, we do need a mover and a seconder for this one.
Oh, yes, okay, so moved by Jim, seconded by Liz.
The rail shed is very important. It's the last piece of rail heritage that we have in Meaford. And I would like to be able to bring this to council's attention. It would be advantageous for the committee, staff, and possibly a member of council to be a part looking into what could be done to bring this back to a more useful state. I've actually spoken to a professional engineering company who is willing to do a complete drawing of the building the way it sits now with all its deficiencies and make some recommendations. I've actually got a price on that, but I've heard from our deputy clerk today, and I don't know if I'm not going to bring it forward. I guess it shouldn't go to council right now, but I've got that in the back pocket for us to get going on this. So the motion, the way it stands right now, is to set up a subcommittee and with permission of council. So this would have to go to council. Thank you.
Mhm. Any discussion or questions? Harley?
Well, I know we're running long, your worship, but I do have some difficulty with the wording. The historical wording. There's no doubt about it. The railway did come to our town in 1872. It came to Station Hill and was there for almost 30 years. And then in 1900, the decision was made to move the station to the harbor. So just the way I'm interpreting the recommendation is that this building in question is in the Meaford Heritage Conservation District, which I know that particular building is, but it had nothing to do with the station in 1872. So I mean, it wasn't moved from Station Hill to the harbor. It was built anew at the harbor.
It's
So
wonderful that you remember it, Harley.
no, I don't specifically, but I just
No, it's point well taken.
I don't know. As I say, to me, I think this could be misconstrued. You know, what railway station are we talking about? Because the building that's down at the harbor now that belongs to the harbor railway station, not the station that was built in 1872. So I had maybe overemphasizing a very small fact, but I in the name of heritage and history and accuracy, I thought I needed to get that out there. There's no doubt about it. If you look at page 69 of Pictorial Meaford,
yep,
this building is there in 1900.
Can you just add a line after the 1872 and the termination point was later established in the harbor or something along that line?
I think anyway the only thing that council is going to see is the recommendation in the last paragraph. Yes, Mr. White.
As part of getting council up to speed on this, because council as a body, of course, exists with no break, but there's new people sitting at council. The harbor storage shed, there was a structural assessment that went to council for the first time on November 7th of 2022. That repairing the building at that time was estimated to be somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000, and that it recommended that given its current condition, that access to the building would be limited. Just needs to be noted that that is the circumstance. The town has that document done by a registered engineering firm, and motion moves forward to council for their consideration in terms of what next steps might look like.
Go ahead. Yes.
Is it? But the wording, sorry, the wording in here is saying community partners and funding community partners. And I think there are enough people in this community who really validate the existence of that building because of what's there and the old railway house, the actual train station, which has been discussed over many, many years about reproducing that. And we have a harbor plan that is supposed to be, I don't know whether it's ongoing through Tatham. I haven't seen the end result of that one yet, but this is an opportunity again for recreating some heritage and tourism in Meaford. And I think that yeah, you can say it's gonna cost $100 and some odd $1,000 to tear it down or replace it. But in the meantime, I'm sure that there are other mechanisms that can keep the place going, hopefully.
Yep. Go ahead.
I was there for that report. If, I think you were there as well. Yeah, I did speak to that report. There was the report that was done by the engineer was very vague. I think it was a glance over. I know it was done by a professional engineer, and I know the chap, he actually did some work on the Collingwood, some work in Collingwood for their heritage. But what I'm proposing is there was some problems with the report that was given to council last time. They accepted it for information only. They also said that they didn't want to have the station demolished. I'm just saying a second look is worthwhile. This is very important, as has been mentioned here. And I think it would definitely be worth the $2,800. I'll put the money out myself to have this done. But I'm sure there's a lot of people in the community who would like to be involved with this. And I think it is a municipal building. Over the last number of years, it's difficult for our staff to work with a building that's that old. It's just not something they're used to. So I think it has been lacking in some maintenance, not because staff hasn't tried, but just because there hasn't been the skill. And I think to have someone else have a second look, that's what I'm asking for. And to have that brought forward, the one that was done in November, to have that brought forward again, I think would be a disservice to what we're trying to get done right now. And I would like to have another report. Like I said, I would pay for it myself just to have a look at that. And I would be prepared to go to the council meeting when this is coming before them, if staff is going to bring that forward, that previous November report. Thank you.
Mr. Voigt?
I'm not here to debate. If the member of the committee thinks it's inappropriate to advise council that there was a previous report existing on a building that is a municipal asset, that's quite frankly too bad. That will still be done because that's what we have to do to advise the new council of what has been considered on this building. I have no stake in the game on this one. If this committee wants to move this forward, that's great. Or not, it is just your recommendation. We'll note again, that doesn't, when a municipality has received a document like this from an engineer, they can't just ignore it. So there are implications potentially on people entering the building, and whatever that means, it'll be whatever it means. In terms of suggestions of bringing, of paying for a report, or even the folks that you've reached out to, that is in contravention of our procurement policies. And with the kinds of negotiation that have happened with those folks, in fact, that particular firm unfortunately may be prohibited from even applying for this if it goes to RFP because of the process, air quotes, that was undertaken. It's not appropriate. Our policies are pretty strict on who can go out and ask for bids on work on behalf of the municipality. And so that has now happened. That's an issue maybe that'll come up in the future as well. But just note, make your recommendation as you see fit. I think it's perfectly fine. It is in the Heritage District. It is an aging building that has a lot of structural challenges to it. And then the question is how much does the municipality want put towards that, or find a mechanism for citizens to raise funds or what have you? That'll be for council to decide.
I think if you've got someone who's willing to pay for the initial survey or initial investigation on the building, you should probably accept that, because that at least would give you an idea of what this building is going to entail. in order to fix it up or do whatever. And this, I don't know the credibility of this company at all, but I think if somebody's willing, it's like the cemetery. You've got people who want to do things in the cemetery and are going to pay for it. So let them do it. Same thing here. It's not going to harm anything to have somebody go, is it? To look through that building?
Through your worship, I don't know the legal implications of that. Of the municipality accepting that a member of an advisory committee is now paying for work to be done on a municipal asset that has essentially been condemned, and then accepting the report based on what then will be recommended by the committee.
I think this is a very highly informal situation, and I would not get my, socks in a knot over it. I mean, it's
There's procurement policy that needs to be addressed. That's all I'm saying.
yeah, well,
And that's not before us anyway. What's before you is this motion if you want to move
so
it forward.
and in the interest of these ladies who all have probably a dinner to cook for somebody, I want to wrap this meeting up and just let's have a vote on the actual motion there to bring it to council and for further consideration. Items for section 8, can we move this on, like Jan isn't here to do item B, item A, can we discuss that at our next meeting? Does that make sense to people? Just move it, it's something that is discussion that we can have at any point in time, really. So I'm going to suggest that we move right along to any committee inquiries. Seeing none, and I think that we are, and everybody's seen the summer newsletter from CHO News. Our next meeting will have to be determined, but I think we are ready to adjourn. Unless there's anything else, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you again.